The gatehouse death trap. The gatehouse was the main entrance to a castle, but calling it a door is like calling a shark tank a swimming pool. Medieval engineers turned it into the most lethal 20 feet of real estate in military history. Here's how you died. Cross the drawbridge, ram through iron-bound wooden doors, and enter a narrow corridor barely wide enough for 3 men. That's when the trap activated. A portcullis, a heavy iron grate weighing over a ton, dropped behind you. Another slammed down ahead. You were boxed in with nowhere to run. The ceiling had murder holes, where defenders dropped rocks, boiling water, and heated sand onto your head. The sand slipped under armor gaps and caused burns that made warriors scream loud enough to be heard on the battlements. Arrow slits lined both walls. Archers shot you from protected positions while you stood there like target practice. This worked because geometry beat bravery. Your army of 500 men? Useless. Only 3 or 4 could fit in that corridor. Your heavy armor trapped heat and slowed you down. The gatehouse turned armies into individual targets, getting picked off one by one. Records show well-defended gatehouses held off forces 10 times their size. Most commanders decided turning their best soldiers into arrow cushions wasn't worth it. Death from above. If you survived the gatehouse, now you got medieval physics lessons. Specifically, what happens when heavy objects meet your skull from 60 feet up. Castle defenders had gravity, and they used it like a serial killer uses a favorite knife. Castle walls featured stone platforms called machicolations that jutted out with gaps in the floor. Defenders dropped things through those gaps onto anyone below. A 20-pound stone dropped from 40 feet hit with the force of a horse kick. It crushed your skull through the helmet. But defenders got creative. Boiling water was common since every castle had cooking fires running constantly. Hot sand found every gap in armor and burned skin in places you couldn't reach. Dover Castle kept piles of quicklime ready to dump. When it hit moisture like sweat or blood, it burned chemically. Medieval chemical warfare using basic chemistry. Defenders had every advantage. They could see you. You couldn't see them. They dropped things with perfect timing. You could only dodge blind. Arrows fired downward had more range and power than arrows fired upward. Château Gaillard had machicolations every 6 feet along the perimeter. Attacking meant walking under a gauntlet, where death could drop from any direction. Defenders also poured burning pitch, a sticky tar-like substance that stuck to armor and kept burning. Water didn't put it out. You basically burned until someone cut the armor off you. This defense worked because attackers couldn't fight back. You can't stab someone 50 feet above you. The only option was to run, and if you ran, you weren't attacking anymore. The moat. Everyone knows castles had moats, big ditches filled with water, right? The reality was way worse. Moats were engineered obstacles designed to kill you before you even touched the castle walls. Most moats measured 10 to 30 feet wide and 5 to 10 feet deep. The water wasn't clean. It was stagnant, filled with sewage, dead animals, and whatever garbage the castle dumped that week. Fall in and you're swimming through medieval biological warfare. Some castles deliberately dumped human waste into the moat as psychological warfare. Nothing says, go attack someone else, quite like a ditch full of literal sewage. Water-filled moats stopped sapping when attackers tunnel under walls. Can't dig a tunnel when groundwater floods it immediately. Problem solved through basic hydrology. Dry moats were sometimes worse. Castle defenders filled them with sharpened wooden stakes pointing upward. Jump or fall in, and you're landing on a bed of spikes. Some castles used caltrops, 4-pointed metal spikes designed so one point always faces up. Step on one, and it goes through your boot into your foot. Crossing a moat required building bridges or filling sections with dirt. Both meant standing exposed, while castle archers used you for target practice. Records from the siege of Kenilworth Castle show attackers spent 3 weeks trying to fill sections of the moat. They gave up after losing over 100 men to arrows and falling rocks. The moat worked because it created a zone where attackers were completely exposed. No cover, no protection. Just open space where defenders could shoot at you from multiple angles while you struggled with water, sewage, or stakes. Destroying siege weapons. Attackers spent weeks building siege towers and battering rams, massive wooden structures that cost fortunes. Castle defenders had one goal: set them on fire or crush them before they got close. Battering rams were tree trunks capped with iron, swung by dozens of men to smash gates. Defenders dropped boulders weighing hundreds of pounds. From 60 feet up, a boulder splintered the ram into pieces and crushed whoever was underneath. The men operating battering rams had one of the worst jobs in medieval warfare. Stand in the open holding a giant target and hope nothing falls on your head. Siege towers were worse investments. These wooden skyscrapers took months to build and stood 60 to 80 feet tall. Castle defenders saw kindling. Fire arrows rained down the moment towers got within range. The entire structure was wood soaked in animal fat to waterproof it. One good fire arrow hit and the whole thing went up like a bonfire, with soldiers trapped inside. Defenders also used long hooks on chains to catch the siege tower and pull it sideways. A 60-foot wooden tower isn't stable when it starts tilting. Records from Kenilworth describe defenders pulling down 3 siege towers in a single day. Trebuchets hurled 300-pound stones from safe distances. Defenders conducted nighttime raids through hidden gates called sally ports. Small groups would sneak out, kill the guards, and set the whole thing on fire. The siege of Dover Castle in 1216 saw defenders destroy 2 trebuchets this way. The nastiest tactic was biological warfare. When attackers catapulted dead animals into the castle, defenders catapulted them right back, along with beehives and wasp nests. Imagine operating a siege weapon when suddenly angry bees arrive via catapult. You can't fight bees. You just run screaming while your expensive equipment sits unguarded. Towers and overlapping kill zones. Castle towers were murder platforms, strategically spaced to create a mathematical nightmare for attackers. Medieval architects used geometry to ensure arrows came at you from multiple directions simultaneously. Early castles built square towers. Big mistake. Square corners created blind spots where attackers could work unseen. By the 1100s, architects figured it out. Round towers eliminated blind spots completely. The curved walls also deflected projectiles better and gave battering rams no good angle to strike. Tower placement was calculated murder. Architects spaced them 100 to 200 feet apart. That's the effective range of a longbow. Any attacker approaching the walls stood in overlapping fields of fire from at least 2 towers. Arrows came from your left and right simultaneously. Try blocking arrows from 2 directions with one shield. Inside each tower, multiple floors had arrow slits. Narrow openings splayed wide on the inside, giving archers room to aim while presenting tiny targets to enemies outside. Some towers had 20 or more arrow slits at different heights. 2 towers, 20 slits each. That's 40 archers all shooting at the same group of attackers stuck between them. Spiral staircases inside towers curved clockwise going up. This was tactical genius. Right-handed attackers climbing up had their sword arm pressed against the central column, making it nearly impossible to swing. Defenders coming down had their sword arm free. Attackers who breached a tower usually died on those stairs. The killing zone strategy worked because it turned castle walls into a 360-degree shooting gallery. No safe approach existed. Records show well-defended castles with proper tower spacing could repel forces 5 times their size, simply through superior positioning. You weren't fighting defenders. You were fighting geometry, and geometry doesn't miss, starving them out. The most brutal castle defense wasn't a weapon. It was patience. Castles were built to outlast attackers in a war of attrition, where time itself became a weapon. Defenders bet you'd run out of money, food, and motivation before they ran out of supplies. Castle designers built massive underground storage rooms called undercrofts to hold provisions for months. These chambers stored grain, beans, dried fruits, salted fish, smoked meats, and hard cheeses. Dover Castle could store enough food for 100 men to survive nearly a year. Water mattered more than food. Castle builders dug wells directly into bedrock beneath the central courtyard, some reaching astounding depths. The well at Krak des Chevaliers in Syria goes down 120 feet. Other castles collected rainwater in massive cisterns holding thousands of gallons. Meanwhile, attackers camped outside had serious problems. A typical medieval army cost 500 gold pieces daily just to feed and pay. After weeks of accomplishing nothing, lords went bankrupt. The siege of Kenilworth Castle lasted 6 months. The attackers gave up because they literally ran out of money to pay soldiers. Weather favored defenders every time. Winter sieges killed more attackers through cold and disease than through combat. Castle residents weren't comfortable, but compared to soldiers sleeping in freezing mud while dysentery ripped through camp, they might as well have been at a resort. Psychological warfare was vicious. Defenders would feast on the battlements, making sure the smell of roasting meat drifted towards starving besiegers. Medieval trash talk didn't need words. Just wave a chicken leg from a tower window at soldiers who'd been eating moldy bread for 6 weeks. The statistics tell the story. About 60% of castle sieges ended with attackers giving up. Not losing in battle, just quitting. Walking away because the castle cost too much, took too long, and killed too many men through simple waiting. Time was the ultimate weapon. Castle defenses worked because they stacked problems on top of problems. Survive the moat, face the gatehouse. Survive the gatehouse, face arrows from towers. Medieval architects turned physics, geography, and time into weapons that made attacking more expensive than it was worth. If you enjoyed this video, Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and comment.